yeah. Okay, well, yeah, welcome everybody. And as you know, we're at the Marxist Library in Oakland. The weather is very pleasant and it's good to see everybody. And we have three speakers. First speaker will be Roger, who's one of the first people I met when I returned to the Bay Area and the Marxist Library. He's longtime member of the Peace and Freedom Party Central Committee. He's on the Task Force of Americas and the World Peace Council, I believe it is, and other organizations. And I think all of our speakers really exemplify the Marxist principle of the philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it, and all of our speakers, I think, do a very good job of that. Our second speaker will be Tom Gallagher, who I met, I guess, during the Bernie campaign. He was recommended as a speaker, and he did a wonderful job in terms of laying out what he called the primary route, which I hope he will talk a little bit about today, but it again lays down the line, the strategy that Bernie actually later took. So he's a very welcome speaker here. And third, but by no means least, we have Laura Wells, who's longtime candidate for the Green Party for the gubernatorial as well as Senate candidate. He's active in a variety of different things in the Bay Area here. So I just want to welcome our speakers and turn it back to you, Sharon.
Thank you. So the topic is, how should working people relate to this election? And we have a lot of different opinions represented here today. We're going to start with 10 minutes from each of our three panelists. And then we'll have a break, and then we'll have just open discussion. And I'll be calling on people, and Alan will be keeping time. So the first speaker is Roger Harris. Please go ahead, Roger.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And I'm going to read prepared remarks. The warnings of a fascist-style coup by Trump are rampant this presidential campaign season. Should Trump fail to carry the Electoral College, Noam Chomsky admonishes, quote, he could send black shirts out in the streets, preparation for a plan to try to bring the military in to carry out something that would amount to a military coup. This, I argue, is a distraction. Never in our lifetime has this country been in such crisis, yet instead of addressing real issues, the political circus diverts the people's attention. What is happening is that the billionaire class is profiting as never before, while the rest of us get austerity at home and war abroad. In the real world, more than 51 million Americans have filed for unemployment since the beginning of the pandemic. Some 27 million people have lost their health insurance, and that is on top of 30 million who were previously not insured. And this is in the face of a massive pandemic. The Federal Reserve has pumped $7 trillion into corporate bonds, municipal securities, loans, and grants to business, while millions are going hungry. The pandemic death toll as of this morning in the United States is 217,000 and 217,071 people. The US is experiencing the greatest combined health and economic crisis since the founding of the Republic. Rather than demanding solutions, the overriding left liberal concern of this presidential season is the specter of Trump and a Trump coup, forgetting the issues that, amongst others, Bernie Sanders ran on. The idea that Trump could, by personal will, change the form of governance in the United States from a bourgeois democracy to fascism is based on a, quote, great man, unquote, concept of the course of history. where a single individual determines all. Chomsky, for example, explains, quote, "There's no doubt that the Trump malignancy runs deep and that he is drawn to fascistic sympathies," describing Trump's proclivity to fascism as a personality disorder. Obscured by this concentration on Trump's personality are the social, economic, and political conditions for a fascist transformation. In Europe in the 1930s, sections of the ruling class in their respective countries accepted Hitler's and Mussolini's dictatorships for fear of working class communist and socialist parties coming to political power. There is no such political contention currently in the United States. Rather, some half of the eligible electorate does not bother to vote because they don't see their interests represented by either wing of the two-party duopoly, and the other half live and believe that we have a genuine democracy with real political choices, despite the abysmal choices they're given. The US ruling class can impose their rule on the popular classes because the latter are either inactive or believe they are represented. If rule by and for the elites is accepted, why should the bourgeoisie squander this gift and opt for a more costly fascist dictatorship? Even if Donald Trump personally could aspire to be the first US Führer, he doesn't have the sufficient backing of the ruling class, notably finance capital. Many military generals detest him, the foreign policy establishment does not trust him, and at least half the active duty service members are unhappy with him. The so-called deep state security agencies are amongst his harshest critics. Trump may be able to mobilize some skinheads with gun show souvenirs, but these marginalized discontents could hardly be a match to the coercive apparatus of the world's superpower. Even if Trump was doing everything right, and he certainly is just doing the opposite, no incumbent president can survive a spectacularly tanking economy plus a pandemic. Bottom line, Kamala Harris and what's his name will be the new residents in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The obsession with the person of Trump is a testament to the political bankruptcy of the increasingly anemic successors of the New Deal and the sycophants on the left, who every 4 years admonish us that never before have the stakes been so high, we have to vote for the lesser evil Democrat. Given their view of the danger of a fascist coup, we should put aside the progressive agenda and work for the former senator from MasterCard and learn to love endless war and increasing austerity for working people in a repressive security state. The left liberal pundits reproach us to vote Democrats simply because the alternative is Trump. Recall similar warnings about Bush and Romney, who are now chums of Democrats in high places. Vote, but not for any issue, because the so-called liberal agenda today is devoid of issues. Liberalism is dead. Short of a fascist coup by Trump, the left liberal agenda has legitimate concerns. They are legitimate concerns. There is a rightward specter that is haunting the US and beyond with serious consequences. White supremacy remains seminal to the nation founded on the expropriation of the indigenous and the exploitation of African slaves. The decline of living standards and the ever more precarious working force are reaching crisis proportions with the pandemic. The worst is yet to come, creating a political dynamic of discontent that can swing either left or right. Rather than merely replacing the current White House occupant with one with better table manners, more radical measures are called for. What remains is a political theater of two neoliberal parties vehemently contesting matters of style and colluding on matters of substance. The two major parties concur: bail out Wall Street, renew the Patriot Act, increase the military budget, modernize the nuclear arsenal, prepare for war with China, pursue regime change in Venezuela, subsidize the fossil fuel industry, militarize the police, and expand the incarceration state, et cetera, et cetera. The trajectory of neoliberalism has entailed a concentration of economic and political power coupled with an increasingly authoritarian and imperialistically aggressive state. This trajectory of neoliberalism converges with fascism, a pervasive security state and the coercive apparatus of fascism are already, in fact, in place. Hitler physically liquidated the trade unions along with the left political parties. He censored the press, and he engaged in a massive military buildup. Sounds familiar. In the US today, union density has declined to a mere 10% of the workforce. No countervailing left political organizations of consequence exist. The mainstream media echo Washington, and the military budget continues to balloon. Perhaps the salient question for the 2020 electoral season is not whether there will be a fascist coup, but if it were to happen, how would we recognize it? Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Our next speaker is Tom Gallagher. Please go ahead, Tom.
Whoops.
Tom, we can't hear you.
That's because he's muted. I had to find him in the list.
Oh,
There we
sorry.
go.
Okay.
Ask me to speak and shut me up simultaneously, will you? So as I was saying, good morning. Nice to be here to the extent that one is really here any place in this era. The first thing I want to do is, in a sense, step back and reflect. I'm give you my take anyhow on where we are currently politically. And I think it's worth doing because what we face at the moment, the choice for president is depressing. It's on the Democratic side, it's pretty normal for what we get. There's not much difference between Biden, Obama, Clinton down the line. It's more depressing than normal on the Republican side. But you know, there's nothing to cause any great enthusiasm on our part. So I think it is worth reflecting on the fact that what we have just gone through, however, is a period in which the idea of socialism has hit the mainstream like never before, I would argue, in American history. There's 3 points I think are worth looking at in that area. Number one is the simple vote. When I make that claim that socialism has never reached as many people as a concept, it's based upon vote. The heyday of electoral socialism in this country up until recent years had been Eugene Debs in 1912. That was his highest percentage of vote of 6%. He got something in excess of 900,000 votes. If you prorated that to the population of current America and added in the fact that women did not have the vote at that point, that would turn into something like 6 million votes in modern America. In 2020, Bernie Sanders got over 9 million votes. In 2016, when he was in largely a 2-person race and ran all the way till the end, he got over 13 million votes. So on that simple basis, and he was running as a democratic socialist, as we know, we've never had socialism have that much understanding, impact, support in the broad population. Easy to forget, given how quickly Biden was able to unite all of the anti-Sanders forces and win the nomination. But nonetheless, that is a fact of our recent history. Secondly, the issues that Sanders ran on, very quickly, many of them became mainstream. And we are now taking them for granted. But if we step back 5 years in time, it was not that way. The degree to which Medicare for all, a single payer healthcare system, et cetera, is now competitive in the sense that a majority of voters in the Democratic Party at least support it. A good number of Republicans even support it. That's new. Now, we've got a long way to go before getting it, but we should be aware of the progress we've made, I think. And third thing I want to reflect on is the nature of the Democratic Party. Back sometime last year, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a phenomenon that I don't think could have existed if Bernie Sanders had not made the choice to run for president and do so in the within the Democratic Party. Ocasio-Cortez was asked about what she thought of Joe Biden and the prospect of him being the nominee. And obviously, we got him as the nominee, much as it may be to our chagrin. And the report says she groaned at that point and said, in a lot of countries, Joe Biden and I would not be in the same party. But she and Joe Biden are in the same party, as am I. And the reason for it has to do, of course, with the structure of American politics, that we do not have the opportunity to form coalition governments between parties that have significant disagreements, but nonetheless consider themselves closer to one than the other. The German Green Party, for example, has the opportunity to unite with the Social Democrats to form a government because they're closer to them than the Christian Democrats. That opportunity does not exist in this country, which is why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is in the Democratic Party along with Joe Biden. Moving on from there, the election at hand, I don't think there would be that it's a controversial statement that only two people have the possibility of being president after this is all over, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Is there an important difference? Is one preferable to the other in a significant way? I would argue that yes, just as a party of the left in a parliamentary system would make common cause with a party closer to it, even though they disagreed fundamentally. I think in the question of Biden, Trump, there are clear differences. Biden does not support the Green New Deal, but nonetheless, Bill McKibben, one of the most prominent environmentalist activists in the country, declares that he thinks that Biden's program is at least a workable start. Compared with the deregulation in environmental policy that goes on a daily basis under Trump, I think there's a clear difference. Joe Biden's healthcare program, okay, he wants to roll the eligibility age to Medicare back to 60 and establish the public option. Is that adequate? Given that we had 10% of the population uninsured and estimated 12 million people have lost employment-related health insurance in the course of the COVID crisis? No, it is not adequate. Is it superior to anything being offered by Donald Trump? Yes, it is. The Supreme Court choice now, the question of a woman's right to choose, there is a clear difference there. And I'm not going to go any further in those. There are many of them. The one outstanding exception to this is one that's been raised by the prior speaker already, foreign policy. And I'll say personally, foreign policy is of greater import to me than all of the other areas, because we can make the argument that if we can't change our own government, it's on us. But what our government does to the rest of the world is not on them. So I'm extremely concerned with American foreign policy, and it is the weakest point of Joe Biden. We're looking at our third supporter of the Iraq war to get the Democratic nomination, fairly depressing. It's the weakest point of the Democratic Party. A recent vote regarding removing troops from Afghanistan carried the Democrats in the House, but only by about a 120 to 100 margin, which I think is fairly reflective of the congressional delegation. Most of the hardcore anti-war forces in Congress are Democrats, but the higher reaches of the party, as I said, we've had Iraq war supporter after Iraq war supporter. And I take this seriously enough so that back when Ron Paul, Republican who had otherwise horrible positions, was running for the Republican nomination, there was no real danger of him ever getting it, but he was a candidate. Ron Paul on foreign policy, he's a libertarian, is rather good. And I think there would have been a serious problem in terms of preferring Barack Obama to him, should that race have ever happened, because he was so much better. So I go into that background to tell you that I take this seriously. If there were a serious case to be made that Donald Trump was in any way superior to Biden, I think we would have to take that seriously. I won't go into detail, but I don't think there's any serious case to be made. So the upshot being, I think there's a clear difference between the two candidates. Biden is the preferable one. So what to do about that? Well, if we had a normal situation, just yell at me when it's time. I haven't timed myself.
It's about 30 seconds more. Go
30
ahead.
seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a normal situation, obviously, if you agree with what I'm saying, you vote for Biden. We have an electoral college. It creates certain space. Laura saved me the time of looking up the California polls. Biden is apparently up 30 points. So I am not here to make a hardcore case for the importance of the vote among our narrow sector in the state of California. I will vote for Biden for two reasons, if I can blurt them out. Number one, I think when one enters a race for a nomination, if one wants to be supported, if one wins, one supports the other side if one loses. And the second thing is that in terms of a long-term strategy, operating within the Democratic Party is what matters to me. It seems to me I've, in passing, given the argument for that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tom. Our next speaker is Laura Wells. Go ahead, Laura.
Well, again, good morning. I've been, as all of us here, have been thinking a lot about the November 3rd election and what will follow that. My guess is that probably everybody here and most people around the country have already decided, they've either voted or they've already decided how they will vote. And the biggest question really is, what will we do next? And will people sort of fall asleep either, in complacency or leave the country in despair? And there are many other options along those lines. And what I've been spending some time thinking about is how actually do people think, the majority of people? Because I surround myself by people that would be either identified as Greens, socialists, communists, anarchists, people who are not part of the 90%, that think differently from some 90% of people. And I think that what they mostly believe is that voting is not powerful. It's not a power that makes any difference. And I mean, if you think democratically that majority wins, then the majority is not even voting. Certainly a strong plurality is not even voting in almost any election that you look at. And so the decision is don't vote if you're looking at, majority rule. And the other is that they do believe that electoral reform is needed, but the level of the information that people receive is that a top thing that people want is term limits. In other words, I want not to be able to vote for somebody, even if I still want to vote for them. I want to be prevented from voting for somebody that I really like. That a whole lot of countries do not have term limits on their on their candidates, and they take that for granted on their heads of state and et cetera. And there are a lot of offices within this country that don't have term limits. But term limits, people think just stop them, somehow stop them. Top two, people liked that because they don't like political parties. That's another part of what the majoritarian view is. Political parties are bad. Politics is bad. Politicians are bad. And so they voted for top two because it took a while for them to realize the downside of it. And the realization came too late, so it was just the approval was going down, down, down. But by the time the election happened, it hadn't yet dipped below 50%. And top two was voted in 2010, and it's been implemented ever since. They believe supermajorities is good because that will keep the bad politicians from doing things unless a whole bunch of those politicians agree with something. So we have here in California, supermajorities are needed to raise taxes. However, simple majority are needed to lower them. And so in boom years, taxes were lowered, then you can't get them back up. And that leads me to one of the, I'm going to share my screen, and it'll probably be a little messy for a minute, but then I'm going to show hold on, we'll get to that one a little later. Okay, so how come this is doing this? This is a trifecta.
We can't see it, sure.
Can you see it?
No.
Okay. Back to Zoom. Share screen. Share.
There you
There
go.
you go. Now you got it.
So this is what's called the sort of the super trifecta. These, see it there. Okay, I can see it. There are six states that have both legislatures, the governor in one party, and they have veto-proof legislatures. So the six that are Democrats are in our great state of California, Oregon, Illinois, Massachusetts, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks like Rhode Island there too, but I know Massachusetts and Maryland. So we have Massachusetts, Maryland, Illinois, Oregon, California, and Hawaii have that. Now, given that that's what there's a veto proof, they have Democrats all over the place, why do we not, we can just look at our own state, why do we not have majoritarian things that the majority are in favor of, like good public schools? Why is California very low in the per pupil spending? Why do we have a high tuition for our higher education and not free tuition? Why do we not have improved Medicare for all, health care for everybody? Why do we have one of the highest incarceration rates in the world? I know at least a couple of years ago, we were second highest, and the highest was the United States itself. California was next. Why do we not have public banks, although we're getting on our way there? Why do we not have rehabilitation as part of our justice system? If we have that much power on the Democratic side, and 90-some% of the, 90-some% of the people are voting within the two-party system, and both parties seem to agree on those things that I'm not having those things that I just listed. Now, the biggest thing that is a problem here, by the way, are ones that have trifectas, just FYI. Go to ballot, I'm not even sure how you say it, Ballotpedia, and look up trifecta, Ballotpedia, you'll see in the lower right. These are the ones that have trifectas, but they're not necessarily veto proof. The other one that you may have seen pop up, this is my third and last. This was where I was trying to figure out what was the difference between the parties' positions on their endorsements. And if you can see the proposition numbered from 14 to 25 with a very short description just to remind you what they are, I put DSA in there, Democratic Socialists of America, next, just because they had 3 that I could find, and they were the strongest determiners between the left side and the right side, where both the Republican and Libertarian were in the opposite of the Democrats, Greens, and Peace and Freedom. I could not find American Independent Party endorsements this time, but I'm sure that they'd be on the right, probably right in line with the Republicans. If you see the Greens, there were a couple of interesting differences between the Republicans and the Libertarian. On the far right is the Green, where you'll see that the Libertarians agreed with the Republicans on those 3 main ones: taxing corporations, affirmative action, and the treatment of gig-based companies. They agreed with the Republicans in that, but they were wanting to give voting rights to ex-prisoners, voting rights to age 17, and less jail. So that's where their differences were. The only difference in the ones that are red were ones that the initiatives were so bad that some people said, oh, okay, yes. Some people said no position. Some people said no, because nobody liked all of it. And some people thought, well, maybe it's okay and it'll head us sort of in the right direction.
Excuse me, Laura, you have about 30 seconds left.
I have 30 seconds left. So let's just unshare my screen if I can figure, oh, stop share, there it is. Okay, and say that given, I might go a little bit over, can't win is the biggest determiner of how people vote, I think. They look at who can win and who can't win. People think that ranked choice voting is going to help open up things to third parties. It doesn't. It doesn't at all, because people think who can win and they rank them first or second. And then they down below, they think, oh, okay, well, I'll vote for the Green or the Peace and Freedom if they're, who's ever running. And they don't put them at the top because they're betting on horses. It's more like a bet than it is this is how I believe. And that's how Bernie Sanders got out. That's how they got rid of Bernie Sanders this time, was that they convinced a whole lot of people that, like, hey, you might like what Bernie Sanders is saying, but guess what? A whole lot of other people are not going to vote for him. White people are not going to vote for him. So whatever he's saying, you don't vote for him. You might, they won't. He can't win. Biden can win against Trump. Was that true or not? Doesn't matter. They did it enough to believe it. Bernie Sanders was doing great a year ago. And just to wrap it up, what happened on Super Tuesday early in March was that he was gone. Why? Because people were convinced that he can't win. And so that's one of the ways that, as Roger was saying, I mean, who needs fascism when you've got the illusion of democracy and getting everything you want?
Thank you. So we're going to give each of our speakers 3 minutes to respond to anything they want to respond that they heard after they spoke. So we'll do it in the same order.
Yeah, thank you.
Roger, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And thank you, Laura. I want to segue from some of the things that you said about the consequences of voting for Democrats. Because Trump is a symptom, he's not the disease, which is the neoliberal order. Jimmy Carter heralded in the neoliberal order, which has 3 main components. 1, austerity for working people coupled with welfare for financial capital. 2, imperialism and endless wars abroad, and 3, the massive growth of the surveillance and security state. These components, as I mentioned earlier, arc in a downward trajectory that converges with fascism. It is the perpetual bad behavior of voting for Democrats as a lesser evil that abets that downward trajectory to an ever more repressive state. We're told time and again, vote for the lesser evil, which is a way of rewarding the Democrats for bad behavior. Today, the Democrats, not the Republicans, are the main obstacle to reverse the downward trajectory. With the death of liberalism as the viable political force, the inheritors are relegated to the role of legitimizing the right and attacking the left. It was the Democrats, not the Republicans, that defeated Bernie Sanders' insurgency and attacked the Green Party. It was the left, and I would add, especially those who use their left's credentials to legitimize voting for Democrats, who are advised to understand who are their friends and who are their enemies. The presidential election race, by mutual consent of the major contestants, is reduced to a single issue, Trump, at a time of unprecedented crisis that call for solutions. Both parties of capital are united in opposing popular demands. The polls show 60% or greater approval ratings for the following issues that the duopoly conspires to squelch by making this an election over a single personality. 1, forever wars and sanctions while de-escalating the threat of nuclear conflagration. 2, national health care program modeled after Medicare. 3, opposition to the militarization of police and the preservation of civil liberties. 4, the reduction of income inequality, stronger antitrust laws, and fairly taxing wealth. COVID safety over economic activity, and the effective addressing of global warming. These are existential issues. The failure of each of the major parties to embrace issues of import to humanity, let alone working people, that's the problem. Our battle is to win over the dispossessed working class, who are the victims of neoliberalism. And this must be the most overriding objective of the left alternative. And I end by mentioning Doug Dowd. Some of you might remember him teaching a Marxist class at the library. And he said at one time, the left in the United States was composed almost entirely of workers. And now we've largely lost that constituency. That is our challenge. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Tom, you have 3 minutes. Anything you want to say?
Okay, well, again, just to, I suppose, to reiterate in response to Roger's response, to simply say that both parties are inadequate to the, their solutions are inadequate to the totality of the problem, and to ignore the real differences between them is just not real life, real world politics. To say that Biden's proposals and Trump's proposals, his actions on environmental policy are the same because neither of them are totally adequate denies reality. And I'm not going to repeat down the line, but this is real. These are people's lives. The difference between these policies matter. Secondly, in terms of what is going on in the country, Ocasio-Cortez, is the most prominent of a field of candidates who are now out there. It's really hard to win these things, but there have been serious victories won in congressional seats for people who profoundly differ with Biden, Clinton, Obama, but have chosen to do it in the taking the viable path, which is to go through one of the parties and not be marginalized. And it's funny, I was surprised when Laura said she didn't think ranked choice voting would help third parties, because if I had gone on longer in the opening, I would have pointed to the state of Maine, where there is a route to vote first for a Green Party candidate who you prefer and vote second for a Democratic Party candidate. And as far as I know, it holds for all offices. It goes all the way through presidential. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong. And that and strong fusion voting, which they have in New York, can go into details of what that means later, if one are the two avenues I actually see of potential for third parties. And absent that, a third party vote is going to be one that likely leads to the greater of the two evils winning. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Tom. Laura, you're next.
Okay, I'll just a quick follow-up, I hope, on ranked choice voting is that San Francisco, Berkeley, and Oakland have had ranked choice voting since 2003, 2004, and 2006, so more than 10 years. Maine has just gotten it. And we used to have Greens in office and now we don't. I think there might be a couple in Berkeley, but there used to be a bunch, like 6 in San Francisco and now none in the school board and city council. Ditto Oakland. People have switched to the Democrats because the Democratic Party has its ways. And one of the things that it stopped doing after Matt Gonzalez got very close to winning mayor in 2003 was that they disallowed the Democratic Party locals from endorsing anything other than Democrats. And so then if you wanted to, and unions would follow suit and all of that stuff. And Lisa Savage in Maine running for Senate against an unpopular Republican Senator, Susan Collins, and a Democrat, did very well in the debate, and people expected her percentage points to go up, but it didn't, because people are looking at the who can win, and the can't win is defined by if you're not on TV, you're not in the media, you're not in the debates. She was in the debates, and you're not getting tons of money. And so that's how, look at how many of the pundits say how much money people have raised as a way to show how strong they are. But I wanted to also talk about what do we do after November 3rd? And I'm thinking, given how the vast majority of people think, the non-two parties percentage is so small that I'm thinking that we really do need to go door to door and talk to people. In Venezuela, they had a fixed two-party system for 40 years until Chavez came in, and he went in somebody's car that somebody pointed out that was my car, around the country and talked to people, and they had Bolivarian circles. They had people getting together, and the Constitution came out of that, came out of the grassroots, which they call la base, the base, which actually I think is a better word, base. And then they started voting, and then look what the two-party system did to Venezuela. And Bernie Sanders himself, I will never forget, called Chavez, who had done in Venezuela a whole lot of what Bernie Sanders purported to do in the US, called him a dead communist dictator. Unfortunately, he was dead, but he was not a communist dictator. And that was the best we've got in the US. That's the best that the two-party system can offer us, is Bernie Sanders. And he called Hugo Chavez a dead communist dictator and continued the horrors of our foreign policy.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you to all our speakers. We're going to take a little break. Jean is going to speak about our organization, and then that leads these discussions, and then we're going to open it up for discussion from everyone. Jean.
Okay, well, to start with, yes, we are a grassroots organization centered on the Marxist Library here in Oakland. And I think we're unique in two ways. First of all, we are all, well, not all, but we are dedicated to Marxism and specifically to different interpretations of Marxism. So again, we're a grassroots organization. We get no foundation money, nor any government money. In fact, we get very little money, but we do the best we can. But I tried to put our fund material, our donation material into the chat, but it won't let me do it. I'll work on that and do that later on. But what I really want to do is announce our next program, which is going to follow this very importantly. And, you know, there's really an ongoing struggle. And we're very fortunate next week. Let me switch glasses here. Okay. Next week, we have the attack on anti-racist organizers. Most of you know that on September 17th, several protest leaders, including 4 members of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, were arrested in Denver, Colorado in a coordinated police attack. They now face over 30 bogus charges, including kidnapping, inciting a riot, and potentially years in prison. And so next week, we're going to have one of the organizers who's facing bogus charges, Lillian House, who is there. She will be joining us by Zoom, as well as Richard Becker of PSL. So that's coming up next week. And if you follow that, we have Wadia Halabi from Boston talking about the overthrow of the Soviet Union and what it means today. And we have other interesting things coming up. So stay with us, and if you can contribute. And also, if you do think as we do that, you know, Marx will be as important for the class struggles of the future as they have been of the past, I hope you will like us or spread the word on our behalf and let other people know about our program. So I think that's it. So back to you, Laura. Laura. Sure.
Thank you. So we're going to have open discussion, and people can raise their hand so I can keep track of the stack, or you can raise your hand like this, but know that I can't see everybody at once, but I'm looking around, and I'm going to
You had the first 2 who I think
Yes.
we had set up.
Yes, and the first 2 who've asked to react are Jean and Raj. So I'll call them. I'll put them at the top of the stack, and I'll be checking to see who else wants to be. And each of you now, everybody going forward has 3 minutes maximum. So Jean, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that first of all, you know, I basically followed Tom's advice and looked very closely at what's going on there and realized we are in the 2-party system. And I remember, you know, and after the Bernie campaign, I re-registered to vote for Bernie in 2016, and I never registered back into the Peace and Freedom Party. So I am now registered in the Democratic Party. And a lot of people will say, oh, that makes you a Democrat, doesn't it? People fail to distinguish the fact that not everybody who is registered in the Democratic Party likes the Democratic Party or thinks it's a worthwhile party. I remember a long time ago, I had a discussion with Dorothy Healy, who was the chair of the Southern California Communist Party back during the McCarthy period. And I had a long discussion with a very smart woman, very hardcore woman, hardcore communist. And I was arguing, saying, no, we can't vote for Democrats. She said, well, look, you know, you don't go into the Democratic Party because you like the Democrats or because you're not there for the social contact. You're there because that's where the power is. And if you want power, that's where you should be. And I'm following her advice. So all people, just because they are registered in the Democratic Party, doesn't make them Democrats. In fact, it could be very well argued that the best way to fight the Democrats is to register Democrat and vote for the squad. Vote for the for people like Bernie, Ocasio, Rashida, Omar, and other people. And that's who the Democrats hate more than third parties. So I just want to bear that in mind. I'll probably have more to say later on, but I've talked a lot so far, so I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Jean. Raj. And then I have three people so far, three other people on the stack. Go ahead, Raj. You have to unmute.
Michelle.
Raj, are you there? Are you there?
I'm here. Okay, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think Roger said that the problem is a new liberal order. I think the problem is capitalism, which has reached the stage of new liberalism out of necessity of the crises, which is within the capitalism as a system. And problem is that the United States liberalism, whether it was in England or US, was based on imperialism. In other words, placating a section of the working class was always by having super exploitation of a third world country. And that is running into difficulty because both because capitalism internal crisis and imperialism is becoming more and more difficult. They thought they had a free run after Soviet Union collapse. So therefore, both parties represent a threat to the working people of the United States. I agree with that with Roger entirely, and others less so, but I mean, others have a different point of view about the elections. But the elections are not going to get one millimeter close to working people's what they need. So yet the elections have consequences. So the threat I think Trump opposes is that he's encouraging white supremacism. You know, he's a white nationalist. Okay, they call themselves nationalists, which in America comes to be white nationalism, and its actual practice white supremacy, which is always present. So there is that danger to minorities and the working class because white supremacists are not about working class. Just like in South Africa, when they formed the party, it was a white people's working class party initially in 1921. So therefore the danger is from that side is white supremacy. The danger from the side of Democrats is more foreign wars, particularly war with China, which will be a world war because India will be involved, Russia will be involved, everybody will be involved, and this time with nuclear weapons. So it is horrible. But by the same token, they're going to be restrained by it. I think they're going to drive towards it, but they cannot do it. So we have bad choices. The working class should vote for working class parties. In California, that's Peace and Freedom Party. And other states, I don't know what they should do, but that's why working people, more than 50% are not voting. Is my time up or do I have a
Yes.
Time up.
Your
Okay,
time
then
is up.
that's it.
Thank you.
Let's stop here.
Very good. Okay, I have four people on the stack: Richard Fallenbaum, Richard Wright, Yusuf, and Orion Edmondson. So I'll take you in that order, and then we'll hopefully more people will raise their hands. Go ahead, Richard Fallenbaum.
You have to unmute. Richard.
Yeah. Richard, you have to unmute yourself.
Richard, you are still muted.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there was, there were a lot of interesting things in the main presentation. But I want to focus on one thing a little bit, the Democratic Party. I mean, I think some of you saw the the recent interview with Vladimir Putin, he talked about the Democratic Party from the viewpoint of a Soviet communist, which he describes having been, and he describes the Democratic Party as a social democratic party. And he says, well, the Social Democrats are the precursors to the communists, so they must be good. And he draws a line from Angela Davis to Joe Biden. Well, I think he was being a little playful, and I think he was maybe holding an olive branch to Biden if he gets elected. He said the Comrade Putin said that Russia will deal with any of the bourgeois parties, but I think we need to sort of have a serious look at the Democratic Party, what its real character is. There's a lot of talk about fascism now, and I think we have to talk about the Democratic Party as not perhaps as a successor to the fascists, to the Nazi Party, particularly the National Socialists of Germany, because it's developing more and more the characteristic, not only as the party of finance capital, which it is, the preferred party of finance capital, the most aggressive sections of finance capital, but it has, it's picking up some of the characteristics of the National Socialists. The demagogy domestically, as Roger pointed out, they do offer certain crumbs to the working class, but as Laura Wells pointed out, they're not really, when it gets right down to it, they're not really prepared to change anything, and they're very aggressive internationally, and they're building a electoral coalition based on ethnic and other demographic features, by stoking up ethnic animosities, gender animosities, any animosities that they can use, they're using. So I think in the future we'll be talking about, and it's not a fascist movement, but a democratist movement. The model of the Democratic Party as the new model for corporate role, for finance capital rule, which is spreading to other countries in the capitalist world. Other capitalists, some of them quote unquote conservative parties, some of them quote unquote left parties, but they're all doing that. And incidentally, it was amazing to me how quickly people like AOC switched. As soon as she got into office, she switched. She became a loyal Democrat. She deferred to Nancy Pelosi on foreign policy. Now she's working with Biden. The same as I don't know about the rest of the so-called squad. And of course, Bernie Sanders set the tone. He never ran as a socialist. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Richard. Next up is Richard Wright. Let's see. I have to ask you.
What was that?
Go ahead, Richard.
So I had a couple of observations here. In particular, with regard to the Green Party, first off, I voted. I mailed my vote in. Whether it gets counted or not is another issue. But I'm not afraid to admit that I voted for the Green Party, with the one exception of I held my nose, I might add, and voted for M.J. Hager over John Cornyn. However, I got to say that, in my dealings with the Green Party here in Texas, it's very, very disorganized and it's very ill run. For example, they had a social hour I couldn't even log on to, and it was, anyways. I've noticed that most of these presentations have talked about issues around voting. And I guess one question that came to mind is, what about non-voting? Especially after the election, we're going to assume here that Biden gets elected. And I know I've had friends of mine who have said, I can't, as soon as Joe Biden gets elected, I'm going to be there in the demonstration, against him. And I'm wondering, that's been going on now for as long as I've been able to vote, 50 years. And it's really, I've been in more anti-war, protests and in the streets, and the Democrats just keep shifting more and more to the right. And so I'm kind of wondering, what can be done outside of these party, voting issues can be done. The other thing is that somebody brought up the point of, get involved in the Democratic Party to take power. The problem with that is that, at least here in Texas, I've noticed that a lot of people are very mad at not the party per se, but at the DNC. And that there's a lot of people who are going. We had a talk, I think it was last week, on the movement toward the People's Party, and a lot of people here in Texas are going to there not necessarily because they're fed up with the Democrats, but because they're fed up with the DNC acting as its own private corporation, and to it, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is still a power broker in the DNC. This is a person who got kicked out, and she's still there. So I'm kind of wondering how you take power in a corporate. I'll shut up. Thank you. I saw the T.
Richard, you can always finish your sentence. That's fine.
No,
I'm just giving you the 3 minutes.
I more or less have.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Next up is Yusuf. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yusuf.
and by the way, Orion has his hand up.
Yes, he's next.
Okay.
Ryan, you're on the stack.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One is a question. In Connecticut here, we have minor parties are able to endorse major party or other party candidates. And I wonder if that's what is meant by fusion.
Yes.
And
Rare.
I would like some more. I think that should be explored. Second, again, I think I agree almost with almost all the speakers, but on theory. But the problem is, I think, with the minor parties is that they come up, most of them, at the last minute during the elections, and then there's this scramble of the same talk. Should you vote for your conscience, or should you vote for Democrats? And the same thing, instead of organizing between elections and reach a critical wave. And when they reach a critical mass, I think they should definitely have more variety, a more democratic system than we have, and we should also organize cadre parties, strengthen them, have a more more unity among the cadre parties. Okay, so those are my comments, but I'd like some more elaboration on this fusion alternative.
In a lot of places, there would have to be a law that permits fusion. And I knew some people in the 1990s who were trying to get that on a national level, but it never went anywhere because neither of the major parties wanted it to happen. But next up is Orion. Please go ahead. Let me see. I have to ask you to unmute. There you go. Please go ahead. Orion,
you're on. You're on.
Orion.
Sorry, Orion Edmondson. They seem to have gone away from their screen. Hello, can you, do you want to speak, Orion? Go ahead.
He's unmuted, but we don't hear him.
Yeah.
Which means his microphone is off on his computer.
You have to put your microphone on your computer in Zoom.
He is unmuted
Yeah.
Maybe we could,
in Zoom.
Okay. All right. We'll have to come back to you, Orion. Is there anyone else who right now?
I'll make a quick,
Alan, go ahead.
and I'll time myself too. Hold on.
All right.
I just wanted to speak to well, my understanding is that did George Bush came out and he endorsed Biden? Is that correct? I believe he has. In any case, what we have this time around is a coalition of the mainstream old Republican Party, you know, people like Romney and the McCains and so forth, and the Bushes, aligned with the Clinton, Obama, Bidens to support the Biden candidacy. And I think this idea of sort of putting the two candidates up against each other and then trying to weigh the relative merits of their positions on issues is really a misleading approach. Because if you really look at what's happening today is that the old political guard, the old Republicans and Democrats have united around this neoliberal program that Roger was talking about. And in fact, if you look at what the Democratic Party stands for now, we have uncompromising support for fracking. We have militarization of the local police, which, by the way, was carried out during the Obama and Bush administrations. We have unprecedented deporting of undocumented workers. We have the financial, the rescue of the big banks and the blow up of the financial economy. These are all policies that are Democratic and Republican policies. And the distress that these policies are causing is precisely what's giving rise to the threat of the right, gave birth to Trump when the kind of the electoral system cracked a bit. And the idea that supporting these policies by supporting Biden is somehow going to move us forward or ameliorate the seems really misguided at this point. And so I would really encourage people to stand up for some kind of independent politics. At this point, these are third-party politics like the Peace and Freedom Party and the Green Party. We've got to start somewhere, and this is where we're going to start. That's basically it.
Thank you, Alan. The only other person I see is Jean, and before I call on Jean for a second time, I'm going to call on myself. So I admit that a lot of people have for a long time taken the lesser evil line, or have always who come back time after time and say, oh, this is so terrible. We have to get rid of so-and-so at all costs and vote for the lesser evil. But I think this time it might be really true. So, excuse me. The Communist Party recently had a presentation and a slideshow about fascism, which I think is excellent. And the main point is that we should take people at their word. So in addition to everything that Trump has threatened about the election, I'll put that aside, we all know that. We should take him at his word, that he means it. You know, sending armed people to intimidate voters and all the rest, including the thing about having 9 justices on the Supreme Court to put him back in power. aside from the election, we should also take them at their word when they go about destroying the EPA regulations, the NLRB support for union organizing, the CDC and everything that it stands for and was supposed to be in place to prevent, and criminalizing demonstrations and calling for federal troops in local jurisdictions, including Oakland. We should take them at their word that they mean that, and that it's not, nobody, we're not saying that fascism, full-blown fascism has arrived, but the fascist tendency has arrived and is growing and is being encouraged by Trump. And the open terrorist dictatorship of the most reactionary, most chauvinistic, and most imperialist elements of finance capital is on the agenda. We should take them at their word. And we should use the splits in the ruling class, the people in finance capital who don't want to rule. I think one of the speakers said they don't really want to have the most terrorist dictatorship and most terrorist rule for capital. They don't want to do that. Some of them don't want to. We should take that split seriously in order to defeat the biggest fascist threat. So now I'll call on Jean. Go ahead.
Actually, we have, Sharon, you can't see this, but
I'm
Oakland
sorry.
Greens has asked the new speaker, Oakland
Oh,
Greens.
Oakland Greens? Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. Oakland Greens, please introduce yourself.
Vicente Cruz, fundraising coordinator for the Oakland Greens. And then also, I think Orion, if he got his microphone fixed, they're still waiting as well.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to say, as I can only see so many people don't have a lot of pictures, but being the only person of color here, I think that fascism has already come in because they're kicking in our doors, right? They're kicking in our doors and shooting us while we sleep. And it's not just now. You can go back to when I was a child, the 60s, Fred Hampton, right? Killed right in his bed too. So I think out and out fascism is here already as far as it goes for poor people and people of color who've been exploited all the time. And the whole lesser of two evil argument, what I'm fond of saying is that the only difference between, it's a little bit stronger now, but the only difference between the Republicans and Democrats is that Democratic Party, when they were in charge, all the white supremacists and everything were in the closet. And now they feel like they're emboldened and just coming out and open. This country has always been racist, sexist, and homophobic from day one. And still we actually treat it as if we're coming out of apartheid. So, I mean, rewrite the Constitution, right? So let's take out the 3/5. There's a whole bunch of good stuff in the original document, a whole bunch of shitty stuff too. Let's take it out, start all over. And then lastly, is there any way, I don't know if anybody has thoughts on this as far as language. When we say third parties, that really kind of bothers me. I like alternative better because Constitution, Libertarian, and Greens, right? Your top three alternatives to the evil of two lesser parties. I think that if we start to do that, changing the way we speak, and so the same thing when we talk about non-binary genders and stuff, if we actually get in there, I think that would also help. Thank you.
Thank you. Orion, are you able to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I need to talk about class collaboration. There's two classes in this world, the international ruling class and the international working class and allies. And it's very, very important that we not be a collaborationist with the international ruling class. Joe Biden and the DNC pick has proved by smashing Bernie Sanders that they are the international ruling class. Trump, who bombed Syria, and it's been proven that there was no chemical weapons in Duma, that he's an international capitalist imperialist. So you don't vote for capitalist imperialists because you're giving the working class a lie that somehow or other they care about the working class, the international class. So it's very, very important to understand. I think that previous speaker said it's always been racist and it's always been fascist-like. It's not really fascist because they take me out and shoot me, shoot Laura Wells too. The other thing is that electoral politics is very dead-endish, even if it's third party, because you're not letting the working class know that they are part of the international working class and they must defend themselves against the international ruling class by any means necessary. So it's very, very important that we don't become class collaborationists. Eugene Ryle is a class collaborator. He is saying to vote for the international ruling class, capitalist class. He's a very nice guy, but objectively, he is collaborating with the international ruling class. And anybody else that does that. The thing was, we used to say, hold your nose and vote. Now we say, hold your loved ones and save the planet and vote for Democrat. No. What's going to happen? Okay, you want to stop fascism, so you vote for Joe Biden. That's going to stop fascism? No. If fascism's coming, any vote for capitalist imperialists, whether they're fighting each other or not, is not going to stop fascism. And I think Roger Harris is very exact when he comes to the scientific analysis of what fascism is and when they need fascism. They don't need fascism. And I'm hoping that people will write in Chelsea Manning. Okay, that's it. That's a hope, but it's almost as idealistic as voting for Peace and Freedom Party, because Peace and Freedom Party is not going to give you, well, I don't know about Peace and Freedom. They might have a revolutionary line, but the Green Party is not a revolutionary party. And I'm not, and I don't think it's, I'm for reforms. I'm for the Green Party because they support Julian Assange and Daniel Hale and Edward Snowden and trying to keep Chelsea safe. But that's good part of the party. The bad part of the party is they run presidential candidates. And that's just the same old deal. Get your icon up there, get you popular person. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. No class collaboration, build the working class, build the international working class against capitalism, imperialism. And like that guy said, we need to change the words, you know? And the last thing I say is MSM, that's not MSM, mainstream media, it's capitalist imperialist media. And every time you say Trump, you should say capitalist imperialist Trump versus capitalist imperialist Biden versus capitalist imperialist DNC pick.
Thank you. Next up is Jean Rule.
Oh, okay. Hey, thanks. And again, I want to clarify, you know, as I said, I'm registered Democrat. I registered out of Peace and Freedom because although they have a good platform, their internal politics leave much to be desired. Let me put it that way. But I also want to say people are calling for, you know, we need a third party. We need an independent party. Well, let me say, people who want an I'm voting for Gloria Riva of Party for Socialism and Liberation because she is the only candidate that supports socialism. She is the only candidate that has an internationalist perspective. She supports the socialist countries, China, Vietnam, Cuba, and North Korea. She's been to all of these countries. So she knows what she's talking about. She has relations, the PSL has relations of solidarity with these organizations. So when people are saying, oh, we need an independent working class party, well, we have one. That's the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They are a Leninist party. They are a cadre party. They train their cadres, and we'll see next week, I think a little bit better about their structure. And they also have, I won't call it a front organization, but they do have a mass organization, Answer, which they have leadership within that organization. So I think next week people will have a chance to look more carefully at the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And when I was talking to Dick and arranging next week's session, he pointed out that they are growing. A lot of members of DSA are moving into PSL because they respect what they're doing. I think they're on 23 states, but they also have chapters, growing number of chapters. So we'll get a chance to look at them a little bit more closely next time. But I just did want to throw that in. And again, make one last quick comment. You know, China is a very well-run country in spite of what people think. And they are a socialist country with a dictatorship of the proletariat. And people need to think about what that means. And they also have an internationalist policy. So anyway, people need to look at these things more carefully. And we'll do some of that next week and we will continue. But I just wanted to throw those 15 cents worth in, whatever it is worth.
Thank you. I don't have anyone currently on the stack. Does someone want to speak? Raj, and then Richard Wright.
Okay, I'm not muted anymore. Thank you. I do think what Sharon said is something we should think about. I consider both parties as a danger to peace, world peace, and they're opposed to working class. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Raj. We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I think both parties are capitalist parties. Ryan said they are representing capitalism, which is in crisis, which is why all this thing around us is happening. 3/4 of the people in the United States have continued to fall further and further behind. Half of them can't survive in the system except under very onerous conditions. So we have that. On the other hand, no Communist Party has been able to reach out to a lot of working people. That's our situation. So what Sharon said is the immediate danger. I support that. Immediate danger is Trump, but a little longer term danger is the Democratic Party. So we're caught between two bad parties, and the answer is really outside of electoral politics. But in the electoral politics, I agree with Sharon that Trump must not come back because he represents a tendency towards outright fascism. That's all I'm going to say at this point.
Thank you. Richard Wright is next, and then Laura, and then Yusuf.
I just really, I wanted to sort of supplement something Jean said, and that is that there's a very good issue of Monthly Review. The October issue of Monthly Review has a China. It's focused on China, and in particular, there seems to be a lot of focus on eco-socialism in China. And if you can get if you get it online, you can go there, or if you can buy a copy, or if you're a subscriber, I just recommend that. And I was wondering how you can. I would dearly love to see John Bellamy Foster, do a presentation at this, and talk about eco-socialism, because I think he's on a cutting edge of Marx and Marx's relation to ecology. So with that, I'll shut up. Thank you. Oh, are we going to have any discussion amongst the speakers of some of these points that are?
At the end, we're going to give each speaker another 3 minutes for summation.
Okay. Well.
And some of the original speakers are in the queue. So Laura, then Yusuf, and then Roger. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, I think I'll wait until later, or wait until the 3 minutes at the end. So I'll pass at the moment.
Okay, Yusuf. Go ahead and unmute. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me weigh in with my opinion. I spoke more in generalities. Harris remarked that the majority of workers that left parties are not majority working class. And I think that's because part of the problem is that I think they went too abstract. In this case, Trump is a clear and present danger. We should not is an immediate danger, and I agree with Sharon and a few others who said that. I think dumping Trump is a nationwide priority. How you do it may you might have some leeway locally, but I think. But I also agree 100% that both parties are the parties of capital. But voting for a party does not mean that you're. I approve of it. Voting is a tactic right now. Unfortunately, we don't have an electoral system in the United States where you could simultaneously vote for your conscience and then your party will implement the tactics. That is what happens in multiple parliamentary countries, which unfortunately the United States is not. And I think in between elections, I think there should be pressure in that direction. And as I said, other parties, the Democrats and Republicans, alternative parties, let me say, if you don't like the term third parties, should if we focus on organizing in between elections and making a difference, they can make a difference in between elections, and just scrambling last minute during elections just doesn't work in the present system. But I think all the let me say that all the presenters, have made almost 90% said the truth, but the difference between strategy and tactics and working people. I'm from Muslim majority country, for example, and I depend on social security. So Trump is an imminent danger to me. So abstractions aside, there's this problem, and we were saying abstractly that both are parties of the ruling class would alienate a less politically sophisticated working class person.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf. Your time is up. Roger? You have to unmute, Roger.
Okay, and just a moment. Yeah, I'm going to share a screen here. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Slideshow. So I want to just comment a little bit about white supremacy, because I think it's a very critical question. It's become even more critical with this particular election because it's become a framing issue. White supremacy is really the seminal project of the American project. We live in a nation that was founded on the expropriation and extermination of the indigenous, and a nation that is built largely in the early days with the labor of African slaves. So white supremacy is not, and it's not simply a domestic issue, because American imperialism is the external expression of white supremacy. So it's a very critical issue. But I don't think we should have illusions that one party of the ruling class is significantly not white supremacist and the other party is. And right now, the Democrats label the Republicans as simply the designated white supremacists. And the Democrats say that they are for identity politics. But I think if we look at our history, we see that both of them used the race card not to achieve social justice, but they used the race card to create divisions within the working class. And I just wanted to bring up this particular graphic here. I think everybody recognizes that man. That's Bill Clinton, and it's 1992. He's having a press conference in a very small town called Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain happens to be the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan. This was not a coincidence that he held this press conference there. And he held it at the prison in Stone Mountain with, if you notice behind him, well, behind him are 3 white segregationists, but behind the 3 white segregationists are prisoners, people in prison being used as props. And notice the color of those people. And this is what he used to make the crime bill. It was passed in 1994. And the main architect of that, according to Cory Booker, himself a Black establishment Democrat, according to Cory Booker, he called Joseph Biden the architect of the mass incarceration system. So we shouldn't have illusions that one branch of the ruling class is going to change the nature of class of white supremacy than here. What we don't see in that first picture of Clinton is that Stone Mountain itself, where the Ku Klux Klan, the modern Ku Klux Klan, was rebirthed. This is some Klan members out there, and this is the sculpture at Stone Mountain. So I just want to add that as a left, we have to fight white supremacy, but by voting for the lesser evil is not going to be the way we fight it. And the question I ask, I hear people saying, this is the year to vote for the lesser evil. What I want to know is, what year will there ever be when you don't vote for the lesser evil? Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Up next is Richard Fallenbaum. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, well, I very much agree with Roger's last point. I actually don't think there's a danger of fascism in this country. I don't think even the proclaimed fascists really understand what fascism is, and I don't think there's there's really any mass support for fascism, either within the masses of the population or in the ruling class, particularly finance capital. I think we have to take seriously this idea, which I'm proposing, that democratism, the ideology of the Democratic Party, is the new ideology of finance capital, of the most aggressive, the most cruel sections of finance capital. That's one thing. Secondly, I'd like to second Laura Wells's suggestion, or at least it should be explored more, this idea of the form of organization using the Bolivarian circles. I mean, it's sort of an extension of this Sunday morning at the Marxist Library. There's a need to develop an ideology and a critique of ideology, of the ruling class ideology, and a development of the working class ideology on a grassroots level. And I think it would be good to start talking about how to do that, and how I think it wouldn't be that difficult, except at least when the COVID-19 crisis has ended, for people to start getting together and having these conversations in an organized way. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any hands right now. You may have noticed that, Orion, you wanted to speak. Go ahead. You have to unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I really like what Richard Fallenbaum says, but you know, the reason that people organize is because they're oppressed, and the people are oppressed, and the people are organizing. And when you organize, then you educate. And Marxists, hopefully, and Leninists, and people who believe in revolution against the international ruling class are involved in those struggles. And there's a multiracial rebellion of millions that has stepped out in front, mostly young people, which is always the case in a revolutionary situation. And we need to learn from them and also teach them that voting is not the way, that what they're doing is so much more important, that they're out there actively engaging with each other. Multi-million racial rebellion, which has never happened in my lifetime, okay? It's not white people, it's multiracial. And this is incredible. This can make the left one of the strongest things that we'll ever see in our lifetimes. And so I think Richard's really right, but it's there. We just have to go out there and engage with the people. We need to, and a lot of people in Code Pink are doing this with Extinction Rebellion. Gigi was down at the pedestrian bridge with the Haiti people. It was an incredible, she said they usually go there with Code Pink, but this time it was Haiti. And they had an incredible response from working class people and allies, beeping their horns and everything. The people are ready. The people are ready. And that's why they have Trump, because they don't like the fact that the people are ready. And that's why they have Biden, because they don't like the fact that the people are ready. The people are ready. And we will either be tailless, or we'll be leaders, or we'll learn from this rebellion. We want to enrich ourselves with the multiracial rebellion of millions that are fighting for Black Lives Matter. Every single day they're doing it all over this country. So I have a great hope in what's going to happen. And I don't have to vote for Joe Biden. By the way, I somehow or other misunderstood. I thought Gene said the crystal ball had influenced him in voting for Biden. So I'm glad that I misunderstood that. I don't know how I understood that, if anybody else misunderstood it. And I remember Eugene, or maybe it was somebody else, said that crystal ball had convinced him that the most important thing was to get Trump out and vote for Joe Biden. But I'm going to vote for Gloria too, and Gigi is too. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. I only see one other hand, so I'll let Jean speak. Go ahead, Jean.
Well, just to respond to that, let me just say, Crystal Ball has a regular program, and one of the programs was on this new movement, Settle for Biden. And that I thought that was a nice idea. And there's lots of things out there, but her point is, if you tell people to vote for Biden and then start talking about how good Biden is, people will know how ridiculous you are. And her point is, just say settle for Biden. And then she has all these memes of different people, Noam Chomsky is going to settle for Biden. Even this effing bee in Queens, she's going to settle for Biden. Why can't you? Now I found another one. What's his name? Our friend Bob Avakian is going to settle for Biden. So I just wanted to clarify that little point. There was another point I wanted to mention, but the other thing I wanted to say is, yesterday there was an announced meeting of the Proud Boys in San Francisco, and I did catch it on the news. And what the news always said was, well, there was a free speech rally in San Francisco, and there were a bunch of Antifa there, and a lot happened. Somebody got punched. One of the free speech people got punched. That was what I got from the mainstream news. I did get a press release from Freedom Socialist Party. They had a different perspective. They correctly said this was the Proud Boys. They were, crypto fascists or whatever they were, how they described it. So it was not a free speech rally. It was a fascist rally. And second, they also correctly said, well, they were there and it was like 70-1 or 6 or 7 Proud Boys there and something like 300 or 200 opposition people, and they were not necessarily Antifa. And to read them, it was mostly Party for Freedom Socialist Party, but I'm sure there are other parties involved in this. So I just want to note that as something people might want to consider on this question about how to fight fascism. And I know one of our comrades in Idaho says he went out and bought a gun because he doesn't know what's going to happen. And hopefully it won't. That's all.
Okay, so Laura has her hand up, and then Raj, and then Orion. Go ahead, Laura.
She's good, Margaret.
So I do want to say something about the Green Party, which is that it gets from all directions. It gets attacked. And one of the things that if the Green Party were elected in a majority in any city council or state or in the country, that would look a lot like a revolution. And we would have public power and public banks. We'd have good public schools and higher education and healthcare. And we would not be fighting imperialist wars and all of that. And the Greens, I want to talk about the Greens' sustainability and why the Green Party has been sustainable. And that is one of the odd sort of things is that we don't have a leader. There's never been a really identifiable leader of the Green Party. And that actually helps us be sustainable because you can't pick anybody off and then goodbye Green Party. Our key values, justice, peace, ecology, and democracy are real basic and they stay true and people like that and the fact that it's interconnected. But also we are international. In terms of the number of countries that the Green Party is in, I believe it's the biggest political party on the globe. We're also national. We have, and we're local. We've had hundreds, we've elected hundreds and hundreds, I think altogether probably it's over 1,000 people have been elected at the local level. In terms of being and we're so important that we have determined a couple of really key presidential elections, according to the Democratic Party. We gave the country Bush and Iraq, is what I understand. And we gave the country Trump, is what I understand. I mean, rather than the Democratic Party wanting to look at what they did not do for the people to inspire them to vote for them, they look at the Green Party's 1 or 2%. And I want to say about the Green Party, we have to run for president. And the reason why is to survive, is to be sustainable. A lot of states are able to keep their ballot lines because of our presidential runs. And the presidential run gets what little media, and it's always got the verbs spoil in whatever media covers us. But that gives whatever people do learn when we run for these higher offices, like governor, like president, learn what the Greens are about, that there are alternatives. Margaret Thatcher was wrong. She wants everybody to believe there is no alternative. Lots of people believe that. But there are alternatives. And so running for president is a way that we stay alive. Over.
You want to say something?
Thank you. So I have 2 more people in the queue, Raj and Orion. And then we're going to stop because we need to let the 3 original panelists do their final summation, and we need to end the recording at 12:30. So Raj,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the American system of election is a rigged system. And so I
Want to
think
say something?
a party like Green Party may not be a Marxist party, may not be exactly what Marxist-Leninists want, is much better because at the national level. But most important thing right now, if you're talking about the election, is at the base. Who we elect at the base. Progressives should be supported at the base, regardless of which party they come from. Because I think that's the only small thing that the working class has some control in the elections is at the local levels. And from there, they can challenge. But I think the system is so rigged that I don't think eventually it will change unless we get to a point where people see no other way to survive but to overthrow the whole system. And Biden is going to attempt, I think, he's going to be elected. I think Trump will be gone. And Biden and Democrats are going to try some kind of Rooseveltian light project because they understand that they cannot keep going. And 4 years from now, if they didn't do sufficient, real
FDR
fascism
project.
will come.
Oh,
Thank you. Orion?
hi. So there's a guy named Jimmy Dore, exposes the Democrats and Republicans. There's a guy, Kyle Kalinske, who exposes he's not going to vote for Biden. And not going to vote for Trump. There's a guy named James Galloway who thinks that there are two cheeks on the same ass, which is great. Check out George Galloway, Moats, M-O-A-T-S.
Today.
And he's got a British Workers' Party. Check out his British Workers' Party. And then there's Lee Camp. So those are the people that I support and that I think you should check out. I didn't quite understand Eugene. It sounds like he's talking about both sides of his mouth. He's going to vote for Gloria, but he's going to settle with Biden. So I have no understanding. It boggles my mind. By the way, Chomsky spoke at Bad Faith. Check out Bad Faith. He was interviewed by this woman that used to run Bernie Sanders and this guy named Virgil Texas. And he keeps saying, he says it 20 to 50 times, just take 10 minutes out so that your grandchildren won't be underwater. Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. It's the worst thing that Chomsky has ever presented in his entire life. So check it out. I put a comment on it and there wasn't a lot of people that watch it, so you probably see my comment. He says, at one point, he says, if we can change Biden, we've got hope. If we can't, we're lost, which is the most fatalistic and stupid thing I've ever heard anybody say. Struggle continues whether Biden's there or Trump's there. And despite Chomsky saying, we're doomed, he's literally saying, we're doomed. We cannot do anything. And we have to hope that Biden will listen to us. If he doesn't, he listens to us, we have hope. If he doesn't listen to us, we're dead. We're sunk. So this is the just boggles my mind. Anyway, I hope Eugene votes for Gloria and not Biden. I don't know what the hell's going on in his head. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who participated. Now we're going to give the speakers 3 minutes each. Roger, you're first.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, I want to thank you for joining this thing because, you know, we differ on how we get there, but both Tom and I are really comrades when it comes to what we want to get. And on a number of issues, we've actually marched shoulder to shoulder. And so the question is how we, so the question is how we get there. And do we get there by every year voting for the lesser evil and moving more and more to the right? Or do we actually say, I've had enough of that. We don't really know where the path is, but we know the direction. And the direction is not joining the Democrats, but opposing them. Because what Tom said was that when we look at the parties, we see differences. And there's clearly differences. But the question is, are these differences the important ones, or are they questions of style? And on the really existential issues, I think we see a unity that reflects the unity of the ruling class. And this is like for ending forever wars. Both parties are dedicated to forever wars. The sanctions against Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, they will continue under a Biden administration. And the threat of nuclear annihilation, that one was started by Obama with a multi-trillion-dollar nuclear modernization thing, which Trump then embraced. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists now has us 100 seconds before midnight, the closest it's ever been in their entire monitoring of the danger of the end of the world. On healthcare, both candidates are dedicated to vetoing single payer. On the opposition to militarization of the police, we have to remember that it was Obama who embraced the Pentagon's 1033 program and increased the funding of police, the transfer of weaponry from the Pentagon to local police by 2,400%. And it was Obama who in 2011 abrogated the right of habeas corpus for American citizens with his National Defense Authorization Bill, which allows for indefinite detention without trial of indictment of US citizens designated as enemies, and who designates them is the president. So we have all these things to be concerned about, and particularly the problem of global warming. We have a choice between one party that says that it doesn't exist, and then the other party that says it does exist, but they don't do anything about it. But they both are united against ending fracking and ending and opposing ending of subsidies of fossil fuels. So we do have existential issues that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Next is Tom.
All right, and I'm going to beg the chair's indulgence, perhaps, since I did not seek another opportunity to speak in the middle. I want to agree, first off, with Sharon's take on the election in a certain sense. Whatever elections may or may not be, they do have real world consequences. And I find, in terms of the Biden Trump matchup, I find no area in which Trump is superior. I find some areas where indeed Biden is no better, but I definitely find areas where he is better. Sharon went into a deeper list than I did. It does include environmental issues, even though Biden is not everything we want. I cited Bill McKibben's endorsement on that front. A woman's right to choose, the National Labor Relations Board, a better healthcare policy, even if not fully adequate. It goes on and on and on. I do want to agree with Gene's take in his first and third statements of what it means to vote for a Democrat. We do not have disciplined parties in this country. You can run on any position within a party. And as a result of Bernie Sanders' decision to run, 13 million Americans voted for a self-declared democratic socialist, which simply would not have happened if he had run third party. The results of that are not trivial in my mind. In the question of the Democratic National Committee, which was raised, well, you may recall in 2017, there was a contested race for the chair of the DNC for the first time since 1985. Tom Perez won it over Keith Ellison by a vote of 235 to 200. That's 54% to 46%. Not bad for the first time out for actual control of the party. So it's not as if nothing is going on. Let me see, what else? Fusion was mentioned. And to explain what that is for those who don't know, I was not aware that Connecticut have what they call strong fusion. You're allowed to add the votes that a candidate gets on two separate lines as one vote total. It's very rare. It can't be done in California. There was an attempt, as was mentioned. It went before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court struck it down as a national right and referred in passing to the two-party system, which was quite interesting since there is nothing in the Constitution that says it's a two-party system. But nonetheless, they threw it out. One relatively minor point I want to point out, Laura mentioned something about the rules in San Francisco following Matt Gonzalez's mayoral run in 2000. I was at the time the president of the Bernal Heights Democratic Club. We were one of two clubs that endorsed Matt Gonzalez as a Green. And there was an attempt to throw us out of the Democratic Party. The only reason we were saved was because the other party who endorsed Matt Gonzalez was the Harvey Milk LGBT club, and they're the largest club in the city. If it was us, they would have just easily gotten rid of us, but you got to be stupid to throw out the largest club. So that did not happen. And what actually happened after that time was a compromise. In a nonpartisan election, you were allowed to endorse a non-Democrat, but not in a partisan election. Mayoral elections are nonpartisan. So just a fine point on that. And thank you all. Nice to see you all again.
Thank you, Tom. Laura, you get the last word.
Okay, well, I think what's important is for us to use our power as much. I mean, we have a lot more power than we think we have. And that power includes wallet power, how we spend our money. It includes rally or protest power, and it includes electoral power. And people have already decided how they're going to vote. But when Biden's going to take every single vote, I don't care if you vote for Trump in California, your vote is going to go for Biden. You might as well use it to say something else. And it sounds like most of the people in this Zoom room are going to do that. The other thing is, what do we do next? And I generally try to back away from politics in the presidential years because I find it so disgusting what the choices are. It's disheartening and just hard to keep going. It's so bad, and the candidates have gotten worse every 4 years, and it's just horrible. And so, but I haven't been able to back away recently, or I haven't. But now thinking ahead, I mentioned the Bolivarian circles that Venezuela did, and I don't know what we would call them, the democracy circles, but where the focus would be on what you might call a real Green New Deal, focused on the economy and the ecology, because people out there are worried about both of them. They are not just worried about themselves and their family and their community. They are actually worried about the entire world. And the economy and ecology go together. They are not opposed. And another thing is that I know in 2013, after Jill Stein's 2012 presidential run, and she also ran in 2016, but she started a green shadow cabinet. And I think it would be wonderful to have one of those, whether it's Biden or Trump. Like, what would people do as opposed to whatever Biden is doing or whatever Trump is doing? What would people do? And shadow cabinets are something that exist, I think, in the UK and in other places, and it would be wonderful to have one here. There was one other, oh yes, workers. I think one of the problems with the workers joining up with either Peace and Freedom, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or Green Party, is that they want to win. And that goes back to that can't win. The fact that our quasi whatever fascist government puts everything in the bucket of can't win except for these two parties that are not on our side. So the fact that they've gotten that into our minds is a huge, huge problem. And so somehow reaching into the neighborhoods, into the communities, and giving people the sense that we can win. We've got the numbers, is something I just, wonder how in the world we're going to do that. But to sum it up, Green Shadow Cabinet, I think, would be great if it didn't continue in 2013. It's probably a really hard thing to do, but it would be wonderful to do, and to do the real Green New Deal for the economy and ecology in some kind of democracy circles in the communities is what I hope we can use our power to do that. And my time is up.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for participating. I think now we're going to end the recording.
Yes.
And stay.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, at yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.